For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places.
Hello, and welcome to a presentation on the great controversy, the battle for your choice. This is the third presentation in the series and is entitled Choices, Choices, Choices. I want to remind you about the book, The Great Controversy, on which these presentations are based, and encourage you to try and get it and read it. I also want to remind you now that at the end of each presentation, there will be details about how you can get a free copy of the abridged version of The Great Controversy entitled The Great Hope. In our last study, we briefly looked at what had to be in place for God to be able to create a free moral agent. All the implications of creating a free moral agent, the risk, the so-called risk. We know God doesn't take unforeseen or unnecessary risks, but God took care of all of these perceived risks way before He had created a free moral agent. We also looked at the plan of salvation, the everlasting covenant, and freedom of choice. At this stage, I would like to give credit where credit is due, and I'd like to give credit to Be Free and thank them for some of the concepts and thoughts used in this presentation. Be Free is a lifestyle center based in South Africa, and you can find out more about them at this website, www.befree.co.za. I'm involved with this lifestyle center, and we look at things from a lifestyle perspective. However, now I want to take you through some thoughts, and I'm going to give you a thought for thought. Your choices decide your habits. We're going to be looking into choices. It's the battle for your choice, and we're going to be looking very deeply into what is a choice. But your choices decide your habits. Your habits decide your lifestyle. We're going to find out what a habit is. Your lifestyle decides your character, and we're going to be looking at what a lifestyle is and what creates a lifestyle. And your character decides who you are, what makes John, John, what makes Peter, Peter, and Lucy, Lucy, and what makes Paul, Paul. And who you are, your character decides where you're going to end up, your destiny. Let's look a little bit deeper into these concepts right now. My whole presentation is based on this concept, and I'm going to reiterate again and again and emphasize this point with you repeatedly in these presentations, as it is central to understanding how a free moral agent relates to a choice and how it affects our destiny. So let's just go through this again. Your choices decide your habits. Your habits decide your lifestyle. Your lifestyle decides your character, who you are, the person, what makes you you, your uniqueness. And your character decides your destiny. So where does your destiny start? Your destiny starts all the way back to the first choices you've made. It starts with our choices. And we can only make choices if we are free moral agents. We are free moral agents with freedom of choice to make moral choices. Human beings, you and I, are created free moral agents with the ability to choose positively or negatively, and we'll be looking into this. This is the one thing that sets us apart from the animal kingdom. The other animals in the animal kingdom do not have this ability to have freedom of choice to make moral choices. A moral choice is a universal choice. It would apply for us here on this planet. It would apply if you were in any other planet anywhere in God's universe. Right now, we are going to study all about choices, what they are, where and how they happen, and how they affect our destiny. Okay, this is your life path. If we had to look at your life as a continuum, it starts somewhere and it ends somewhere, and this is your life path. Your life path either has a positive aspect to it or a negative aspect. And we want to, of course, emphasize and try and encourage you into the positive aspect. But it starts with your choices. Remember, your choices end up deciding the end of your life path, your destiny. Your choices. Your choices are either going to be positive or negative. Your choices lead to your habits. Your habits are once again either going to be positive or negative. And we haven't even defined what a choice and a habit is yet. But I'm just giving you this concept that your lifestyle is going to be positive or negative. And your character is going to be positive or negative. Eventually it ends up with your destiny, which is either going to be positive or negative. And these presentations are there to try and encourage you to have and end up with a positive destiny. But once again, it all starts with your choices. And if your choices are positive, you're going to have positive habits. If your habits are positive, you're going to have a positive lifestyle. If your lifestyle is positive, you're going to have a positive character, a positive you. And if you are positive and you've got a positive character, you're going to end up with a destiny. And the reverse is, of course, also true. If you have negative choices, you're going to have negative habits, you're going to have a negative lifestyle, negative character, and a negative destiny. Okay, so where do we make our choices? In our minds. This is where we make our choices, right here behind my forehead. In the presentation to follow, we'll be looking into the mind and the part of the brain where we make our choices, and we will discover many interesting and powerful concepts there. But we first need to understand all about what a choice is and how it happens before we will look at exactly where it happens in greater detail. And of course, where it happens also affects the choice. But right now, just to follow on with these thoughts, where does our destiny then lie? Our destiny lies in our minds. Where are we lost and saved then? In our minds. And then where do we need healing? Where is the problem? The problem is in our minds, with our thinking. Let's look into these concepts a little bit deeper. Let's look at anatomy. Anatomy was always very interesting and important in our medical studies, and essential to our students, to help our students to get better acquainted with the human body and learn how and where the certain organs were to be found and how they function. So let's look at Anatomy 101, what we are like on the inside, the real us. We're going to be looking at the anatomy of a choice, what a choice looks like, the anatomy of a habit, the anatomy of a lifestyle, the anatomy of a character, and of course, your destiny. Right now, we're going to go through and discover where, how, where, and why a choice, a habit, a lifestyle, and a destiny happens. Before we do that, I just want to mention, in the universe, there are two driving forces. Remember that our destiny is decided by our choices, and we make our choices in our mind based on two modulators that influence or modulate our choices, and this also our destiny. These two modulators are good, which means God, because God is good, and evil, the devil. Every choice is based on these two modulators, and we want to make choices that help us to avoid pain and help us to have pleasure. And using this plain pleasure principle, you can help to modulate your choices by cognitively. That means by thinking about it. you can associate massive pain or hurtful associations with a negative choice, and massive pleasure or happiness with a positive choice, as we will see. Our problem, though, is that we have lost sight of the truth. And remember that Jesus is the truth. I am the way and the truth, he said. And we have believed the lies of the enemy, the devil, Satan. And this, we are so confused that we think that pain is pleasure and that pleasure is pain. Jesus can help us to get these modulators or influences straightened out. For instance, you need to be convinced that a choice has painful consequences to it before you would ever consider changing that choice. If you're not convinced that it's wrong or hurtful, then we'd never change it. Let's use smoking as an example. You first need to realize that smoking is harmful to you and to those around you before you would choose to stop smoking. Once you realize that smoking is harmful, then you can use the pain-pleasure principle to associate massive harm with continuing smoking, or pleasure in terms of stopping this habit of smoking. Painful things like cancer, emphysema, heart attacks, high blood pressure, and high expenses, as well as massive pleasure with stopping, like having more time with friends, a clean breath, more energy, more money, etc. By doing this, you'll be influencing or modulating your choices to want to avoid smoking. We will discuss some more of this later. So let's start with a choice and look deeper into what a choice is and how and when and why it happens. Every choice has a stimulus thought-response relation. And this is what we're going to look at on the screen now. A stimulus, that's the initiating factor of a choice, it goes through the modulators of the pain and the pleasure, and you've already associated pain with certain choices or pleasure with certain choices and vice versa. And it ends up with the response. A response is the actional cognitive choice, the end result, if you like, that results from this stimulus thought response process. Remember that this is working at a subcellular level, at a chemical and particle level in your mind, in the brain. Those neurotransmitters, those little chemicals that cross the neurons, are being fired up and transmitted across the synapses as neuron cells are being fired up and activated. Okay, let's look at a more detailed unit choice. The stimulus comes in, that little trigger, it comes in through our 5 senses. The smell, the touch, hear, see, taste, and it goes through and forms a thought. You smell a nice smell, mom's cooking in the kitchen, or you remember your mother's cooking, comes in and it stimulates a thought. That thought gets divided into 2 modulators, the pain-pleasure principle, the 2 forces. And we've already got associations. It's good cooking, smells good, positive, pleasure. A bad smell, negative, we want to avoid it. And then it goes through a second modulator, what we call the principal modulator or the feeling modulator. The feeling is based in your limbic system. It's an area surrounding your brain stem. You've got to visualize it in 3 dimensions, but it's where we experience feelings and emotions, etc. And this is the second level of modulation that takes place. The thought gets modulated through the pain, pleasure, and then comes through the limbic system, the feeling, or through the principal system, which is the cortex. You've heard of gray and white matter? That's the area where we do our thinking, our active cognitive thinking. And it gets filtered through there and eventually leads to the response. So it comes with a stimulus, goes through your 5 senses, it leads to a thought, gets filtered through the pain, pleasure modulators or influences, if you like, the 2 forces in the universe that influence our choices. Once again gets modulated through the principal feeling system, the cortex or the limbic system, and eventually leads to the response. And this response, as we will see, is your choice. Everything up to this point, we are only influences or modulators of the final product, which is the response, the final result, the choice of this stimulus thought response process. Okay, how do you know that a choice is positive or negative? I said that a choice is either positive or negative and has a positive effect or a negative effect in each and every step of your journey to your destiny, that whole journey that we've just been through. But how can we know that we're making a positive choice, the right choice? In the stimulus-response relation, where the final response happens, which means the choice has been made, it leaves us with a reaction. The stimulus comes, it goes through the response, we get the response, and for every action there's a reaction, and at this level, the choice level, we get a feeling, the action-reaction. There's three experienced reactions for a positive reaction. If the response is positive, if that choice is positive, the response is going to leave you, others, or God with a feeling that it was okay. 3 people need to be okay with the choice you've made. 3 people. But you only need one negative, one not okay, to make a negative response or negative choice. God is okay with your choice. You are okay with your choice. Others are okay with your choice. For a negative choice, God is not okay with your choice. You are not okay with your choice, or anybody else has a problem with your choice. Just one person would make it negative, and that is not happy as a result of your choice means that choice is based on selfishness and not on love. A choice is either positive or negative and has a positive effect or negative effect in each and every step of our life journey. So let's see how this works. Your choices are the positive. You've got your 3 positives. God's okay, you're okay, I'm okay with that choice. Others are okay. Or God is not okay, you are not okay, and others are not okay. And this leads to a habit. In that habit, 3 people are okay with it. In the habit, if it's negative, 3 people are not, or just one person of those 3 are not okay with it. And this leads to a lifestyle where once again, God is happy with your lifestyle, or just there's an aspect that is not positive for either yourself, God, or others. And this means, if you're looking this side, choices and change needs to take place. Once again, your character will be positive or negative, and your destiny will also be positive or negative, with God being happy with it, or God not being happy with it, you being happy with it or not happy with it, others happy with it or not happy with it. Of course, God is the most important person in the 3 that you always need to consider, because others could be unhappy with it and think something is wrong, because we've already got confused as to what is pain and what is pleasure. So they might think something's pleasurable and we know it's painful, and so they've got it wrong. God is the ultimate one that we need to filter through. Is this choice positive or negative? Okay, so let's look at the anatomy of a habit. A habit is simply the same choice repeated 23 times. It begins to form a habit. Let's look at a more detailed habit. 23 choices come in. The stimulus comes through your 5 senses, smell, touch, hear, see, and taste. A thought is provoked. It is filtered through the pain, pleasure principles. It gets filtered through the principal feeling modulators or influences, and eventually you get to a response, and out comes 23 choices. that same choice repeated 23 times is a habit. A habit can be a very tenacious thing that has been repeated over and over again over many years. So when you try to take away a habit, it just remains there. For instance, if you take away the H in the word habit, a bit still remains. And when you take away the A in the word a bit still remains. And when you take away the B in the word, it still remains. And even when you take away the I, there's something that still remains. Up to now, we have been looking at the normal anatomy of what we are like on the inside, our choices and habits so far. But I'm now going to divert just a little bit for just a moment and look into abnormal anatomy, or what we would call pathological anatomy. We will, however, be speaking quite a bit about this presentation in presentation 6. So let's briefly look at the anatomy of a habit. A habit is formed from negative choices exercised so many times, more than 23 times at least, with negative choices and habits, with only negative modulators. Now, we haven't learned what a modulator is in detail yet. We'll look at this in the next presentation, but there's only negative modulators, only negative influences. A modulator is basically an external influence that influences our choices, and we'll talk a bit in the next presentation about this. So addiction has usually no positive influences or modulators at so many levels, at the mental level, at the physical level, at the social level, at the spiritual level, that you are grounded or bound in that habit and totally unable to stop that choice without external help or assistance. As we will discover, we are all actually totally addicted and cannot help ourselves. We are addicted to selfishness, the opposite of love, and this is called sin. We call this sin, and we are totally helpless and need help from outside of ourselves. Okay, can an addiction be overcome? And the answer is, hallelujah, yes and no. An addict, that's us sinners too, must realize that he is powerless to make the right choice. And this he must first choose, but also to realize that he needs help with that very first choice. He's incapable of making that positive first choice. Non-addicted humans can help and assist with the modulators or influences of the initial first choice. All humans are addicts, as defined above. We all are or have been addicted to sin. So can sin be overcome? We will be looking quite deeply into this addiction in the presentations that follow. Once this initial choice has been made, then with assistance of the physical, mental, social, and spiritual assistance, which we call practical Christianity. That's where somebody comes and picks up his brother and is carrying that person. The positive choice and supporting that person to make a positive choice, for instance, to stop the drug addiction at least 23 times so that a new habit is formed, we can help somebody to make that initial choice and break an addiction. It then needs to be assisted and strengthened until it is thicker and stronger than the old habit or addiction. The addiction to drugs can often, however, be easier to manage and help with this initial first choice because the addict's condition is more obvious and he can realize it more easily than sometimes we can pick up the problems of, for instance, selfishness and sin. Okay, we will revisit addictions later, but let's get back to our normal anatomy again and look at the anatomy of a lifestyle. A lifestyle is the many habits formed by your choices put together. The anatomy of a choice. What is your character? The person formed by your lifestyle. You, the person that makes you. And how many choices and habits do you think it took to form your lifestyle? The anatomy of your character is then who you really are. Let's look at the anatomy of a destiny then. The destiny is where you end up based on your character. So your choices form your habits form your lifestyle forms you, your character, and your character decides your destiny. Let's look at the complete view. Here we've got a unit choice, a choice made 23 times. The stimulus comes in, goes through your 5 senses. It forms a thought. It's modulated through the pain-pleasure principle. It gets modulated through the cortex and feeling and limbic system, and it leads to the response, which is your choice. Your choice repeated 23 times leads to your habit. A habit, all your habits put together form your lifestyle. Your lifestyle forms your character, who you are, and who you are decides your destiny. That is the complete view. So, if you want to change something, if you want to change your destiny, you need to change your character. If you want to change your character, you need to change your lifestyle. If you want to change your lifestyle, you need to change your habits. And if you want to change your habits, you need to change your choices. If you want to change your choices, you need to change your stimulus thought response process. The problem is that you can't. You can only limit the exposure of your senses to these modulators. We'll leave this for another time, looking into how these influence our choices. That is why we sin when we, by choice, choose to transgress God's law in our minds, because that is where we make the choice. The reaction, the outward act, is only seen later. We cannot go back further than this into explaining how or why sin occurs, then the response in the stimulus thought response process. To go back further than this is to explain sin and the modulators, and the temptation becomes the actual choice if you do this. We can never ever explain sin so as to excuse it. This will be another mystery that we will be looking into later. In our next presentation, we will be looking more deeply into our choices, what they physically look like and how this affects our natures, and why our nature or inclination is the way it is. Friends, I now ever want to invite you to make some choices with me based on these presentations. Realize that only you can choose for yourself. You choose your destiny. Choose to limit your senses, those modulators, and your 5 senses to only good modulators. And the third choice, I'll also invite you to choose to read and study and look at chapters 29 to 32 in the Great Controversy. I'll also remind you about our special offer, The Great Hope. We'll put details on the screen shortly where you can get a free copy of this book. Thank you for listening to this presentation, and until next time, God bless and goodbye.